3 minutes after my mother stood up during our holiday lunch and ordered me to leave for relying on the family too much, I simply smiled. I walked to the back room and quietly packed my bags. No one at that table knew I had been preparing for this exact moment for months. They believed they were asserting authority, but they were actually losing the one thing they thought they held forever. My name is Amber Walsh, and if you looked at my life on paper, you would see a 33-year-old woman with a steady job, a clean rental record, and a credit score that hovered near perfect. But if you looked at my life through the lens of the people sitting around this mahogany dining table, you would see a charity case, a project, a child who had simply refused to grow up. The air in my mother's dining room was always stifling, kept at a temperature that felt tropical even in the dead of winter. It smelled of sage, roasted turkey, and the specific, cloying perfume my mother, Darlene, had worn since the early 90s. It was the scent of control. We were 20 minutes into the holiday lunch. The table was set with the good china, the plates with the gold rims that we were forbidden from touching as children. Now, we were allowed to eat off them, but the price of admission was listening to the commentary. My Aunt Linda was to my left, picking at her green beans. My father, Roy, sat at the head of the table, chewing with a rhythmic, mechanical jaw movement that suggested he was merely fueling a machine rather than enjoying a meal. And across from me sat my sister, Tessa, and our mother. They were a unit, those two. Tessa was the golden child, the one who had married a man with a dealership and moved into a 4-bedroom house 3 streets over. She had produced 2 grandchildren and followed every rule in the unspoken handbook of our family. I, on the other hand, was the cautionary tale. "The stuffing is a little dry this year," Tessa said, her voice high and airy. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly behind her designer frames. "Did you help Mom with this, Amber?" She knew I had not. I had arrived exactly at noon, as instructed, to find everything already done. That was the trap. If I arrived early to help, I was in the way. If I arrived on time, I was lazy. "I offered," I said, keeping my voice level. "Mom said she had it handled." Darlene sighed, a sound that seemed to deflate her entire upper body. She placed her fork down with a deliberate clink. "Well, it is hard to manage everything alone, Amber, but I know you are busy with whatever it is you are doing these days." "I am working, Mom," I said. "Same job as the last 3 years." "Right," she said, dragging the word out. "That job." She made my administrative position at a logistics firm sound like I was selling lemonade on a street corner. The reality was that I made a decent salary. I paid my rent. I paid my car insurance. But in this house, facts did not matter. What mattered was the narrative, and the narrative was that Amber was struggling. Amber was fragile. Amber needed to be saved. "I was talking to the neighbors yesterday," Darlene continued, addressing the table at large but keeping her gaze fixed on me. "Their daughter just bought a second property, an investment rental. Must be nice to be so settled at that age." "Amber is settled," my father said. It was the first time he had spoken. His voice was deep, gravelly, and entirely dismissive. "She is settled in that apartment complex." "The one with the gate that is always broken?" Tessa asked, taking a sip of her wine. "I worry about you there. Amber, honestly, it is not safe, but I guess it is what you can afford." I cut into my turkey. I did not look up. "My gate works fine, Tessa, and I like my apartment." "You like it because we help you keep it," Mom said sharply. The table went quiet. Forks paused halfway to mouths. This was it, the pivot, the moment where the pleasantries of the holiday were peeled back to reveal the rot underneath. "Excuse me?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "The groceries," Darlene said, counting off on her fingers. "The furniture, the emergency cash I slipped into your purse last month because you looked pale." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, not from shame, but from the sheer audacity of the lie. The groceries were bags of food she forced on me when I visited. Things I did not eat and did not ask for. The furniture was her old sofa she insisted I take because she was redecorating, and she didn't want to pay a removal fee. And the cash? $20 she had shoved into my coat pocket while I was trying to leave, telling me to buy a real lipstick. "Mom, I never asked for any of that," I said, my voice steady. "I have told you to stop giving me things. I do not need them." "See," Tessa said, shaking her head. "Ungrateful. Mom does everything for you, and you act like it is a burden." "It is a burden when it comes with strings," I said. My father cleared his throat. It was a warning sound. "Amber, do not speak to your mother that way." "I am just stating facts, Dad." "The fact is," Darlene said, her voice rising, trembling with a manufactured emotion that I had seen her rehearse 1,000 times, "that we have crippled you. We have loved you too much." She stood up. The movement was sudden enough that Aunt Linda flinched. Darlene smoothed down the front of her festive red dress. She looked around the table, making eye contact with every relative, ensuring she had their full attention. She was playing to the gallery. She wanted witnesses. "I have been thinking about this for a long time," Darlene announced. Her tone was somber, like a judge delivering a sentence that pained her more than the accused. "We have done you a disservice, Amber, by catching you every time you fall, by supplementing your life so you never have to feel the reality of the world." I placed my knife and fork down, side by side. I knew the script. I was supposed to cry now. I was supposed to beg her not to say these things in front of Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob. I was supposed to apologize for being the failure they needed me to be. "So," Darlene said, taking a breath that swelled her chest, "I am making a decision for you, since you refuse to grow up on your own." She pointed a manicured finger at me. "You need to leave, now, not just this dinner, but you need to figure out your life without us. No more coming here for free meals. No more relying on the family as your safety net. You are 33 years old. Amber, it is pathetic." The word hung in the air, suspended over the mashed potatoes. Pathetic. Tessa smirked. It was subtle, just a twitch of the corner of her mouth. But I saw it. She was enjoying this. She was the successful one, and for her success to shine the brightest, I had to be the shadow. "You want me to leave?" I asked. "I want you to stand on your own 2 feet, Darlene said, her voice hard. "I want you to go out that door and not come back until you can prove you are an adult. We are cutting you off, for your own good." My father nodded, taking another bite of a roll. "It is time, Amber. You lean too hard." The injustice of it should have made me scream. I had paid my own way through college. I had never asked them for a loan. The reliance they spoke of was a fiction they had written to keep me small, to keep me coming back so they could feel benevolent and powerful. They needed me to be needy. But today, they had overplayed their hand. They thought this public shaming would break me. They thought I would panic at the idea of being cut off from a support system that didn't actually support me. They were wrong. I looked at Darlene. I looked at the triumph in her eyes. She was waiting for the explosion. She was waiting for the drama that would feed her emotional vampire soul for the next 6 months. She would tell all her friends how hard it was, how she had to show tough love to her wayward daughter. I did not give it to her. I smiled. It was a small, polite smile, the kind you give a stranger who holds a door for you. "Okay," I said. Darlene blinked. The script had stalled. "Okay?" "You are right," I said, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped against the hardwood floor, a harsh sound that cut through the silence. "I should go." I stood up. I did not look at my food, which was still steaming. I did not look at my aunt, who was staring at her plate in secondhand embarrassment. "I will just get my things," I said. I walked out of the dining room, my heels clicking on the floor. I felt their eyes on my back. They were confused. This was too easy. Where were the tears? Where was the begging? I walked down the hallway to the guest room where I had left my coat and my overnight bag. The room was exactly as it had been when I was a teenager. The same pastel floral wallpaper, the same dolls lined up on the shelf, staring with dead plastic eyes. My mother kept it this way to remind me that I was still a child here. I picked up my coat. I picked up my bag. I had packed light. I always packed light when I came here. because I knew the exit could happen at any moment. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't just leaving the house, I was leaving the dynamic. I checked my phone. I had a notification from my bank app. The transfer I had scheduled for tomorrow had cleared early. My savings were moved. My direct deposit was updated. My address was already changed in the system at work. I took a deep breath. The air in the hallway was cooler than the dining room. It felt like oxygen. I walked back toward the front door. I had to pass the dining room archway. They were all still sitting there, frozen in a tableau of dysfunctional suburban royalty. Darlene was still standing. She looked at me, her brow furrowed. She couldn't understand why I looked so calm. To her, she had just severed my lifeline. She didn't realize she had just cut the anchor that was dragging me down. "Goodbye," I said. I didn't say it with anger. I said it with finality. I opened the heavy oak front door. The winter air rushed in, crisp and biting. It stung my face, and it felt wonderful. As I stepped onto the porch, I heard the murmur of voices start up again behind me. I paused for just a second as the door swung shut. Through the narrowing crack, I heard my mother's voice. She wasn't shouting anymore. She was whispering to Tessa. But in that house, the acoustics were designed to carry secrets. "She will be back," Darlene hissed, a sound full of confident venom. "She cannot survive. Give it 2 weeks. She will be crawling back." The door clicked shut, sealing the sound inside. I walked down the driveway to my car. My hands were not shaking. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm. 2 weeks, she said. I unlocked my car and tossed my bag into the passenger seat. I looked back at the house one last time. The windows were glowing with warm, yellow light, looking for all the world like a perfect American home. "Watch me," I whispered to the steering wheel. I started the engine and drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I had a schedule to keep, and for the first time in 33 years, it was entirely my own. As I drove down the interstate, the silence in my car felt heavy, not empty. It was a physical weight, pressing against my chest, but for the first time in years, it was a weight I had chosen. The further I got from my mother's driveway, the more the adrenaline of the exit began to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. My mother's voice still echoed in my ears, that venomous whisper promising I would be back in 2 weeks. She believed it because she had engineered my life to ensure it. For 33 years, the narrative had been consistent. Amber is messy. Amber is forgetful. Amber needs help. But as the highway markers blurred past me, I let myself pull the thread of that narrative and watch the whole tapestry unravel. The truth was not that I needed their help. The truth was that their help was the cage they had built to keep me inside. I thought about the key. 3 years ago, when I moved into my current apartment, the one Darlene called unsafe and Tessa sneered at, my mother had demanded a spare key. She had not asked. She had simply held out her hand after the movers left and said she needed it for emergencies. I was 30 years old, but the conditioning was so deep that I had handed it over. I told myself it was normal. Families look out for each other. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find my living room rearranged. The sofa was pushed 3 inches to the left. My throw pillows were swapped. The stack of books on my coffee table had been reordered by size. The air smelled of her perfume. When I called her, shaking with a violation I could not quite name, she had laughed. She told me she was just dropping off some mail that had gone to her house and thought the room looked cluttered. So she fixed it. When I got angry, she cried. She told me I was ungrateful. She told me she had scrubbed my floor on her hands and knees because she loved me. And this was how I repaid her. I ended up apologizing to her. That was the cycle. They crossed a boundary, and when I reacted, they made my reaction the problem. The intrusion was framed as love. My objection was framed as instability. Tessa was the architect of the guilt. If Mom was the hammer, Tessa was the velvet glove that made sure the bruises didn't show. She was the one who would call me after these incidents, her voice dripping with that patronizing sisterly concern. She would tell me that Mom was just getting older, that she worried so much, that I needed to be more patient. "You know how she is," Tessa would say. "She just wants you to be safe. We all do. You are so disconnected sometimes. Amber, it scares us." Disconnected. That was their word for independent. They scrutinized my schedule as if I were a teenager on parole. If I didn't answer a text within 20 minutes, my father would call. If I didn't answer the call, they would call my work. They had done it twice, humiliating me in front of my supervisor, claiming it was a family emergency. The emergency was always nothing, a question about holiday plans, a rumor about a cousin, but the message was clear. You are on a leash. I remembered the boyfriend I had 2 years ago. Mark. He was kind, quiet, and observant. He was the first one to point out that it wasn't normal for my mother to show up at my apartment at 7 in the morning on a Saturday without calling. He was the one who asked why I had to justify every dollar I spent to my sister. My family sensed the threat immediately. They didn't forbid me from seeing him. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they dissected him. Tessa made jokes about his car. My father asked him pointed questions about his career stability until Mark stuttered. My mother would sigh whenever his name was mentioned, a long, tragic exhalation that suggested I was settling for garbage. They made me feel embarrassed by him. They made me feel like I was making a mistake. Eventually, the pressure seeped into the relationship, rotting it from the inside out. When we broke up, my mother hugged me and said, "It is for the best. He just wasn't one of us." She was right. He wasn't one of us. He was free. I signaled to change lanes, my grip on the steering wheel tightening. I had spent so long believing I was the weak one. I believed I was the one who couldn't manage my life, which was why they had to intervene. I thought the anxiety that lived in my gut was a flaw in my biology. But 6 months ago, something snapped. It was a Tuesday. I had come home to find a note on my kitchen counter. "I took your winter coat to the dry cleaners. It smelled musty." I hadn't given my mother a key to this new lock. I had changed it after the furniture incident, but there was the note. I stood in my kitchen, holding that piece of paper, and I realized with a terrifying jolt that she must have made a copy of the new key when I visited home and left my purse unattended. She had stolen access to my home. I didn't call her. I didn't scream. That was when I stopped reacting and started recording. I went to the store and bought a black moleskin notebook. I hid it in the spare tire well of my car, the one place I knew she would never look because it involved dirt. I started writing it all down. June 12th. Mom let herself in. Took coat. No permission given. June 15th. Tessa called 3 times during work hours. Demanded I cancel dinner with friends to babysit her kids because she had a migraine. When I refused, Dad called and said I was selfish. July 4th. Mom made a comment about my weight in front of the neighbors. Said she was just worried about my health. Writing it down changed everything. When it was just in my head, it was a swirling mess of emotions and guilt. But on paper, it was data. It was evidence. I looked at the dates. I looked at the frequency. I saw the pattern. The intrusions ramped up every time I achieved something. When I got a promotion, Mom had a health scare that turned out to be nothing, but it forced me to miss my celebration dinner when I planned a trip with friends. Tessa had a marital crisis that required me to stay in town to support her. They weren't protecting me from the world. They were protecting themselves from losing their prop. I was the designated failure. As long as I was the mess, they could all feel superior. As long as I was the child, they remained the parents, the rulers, the competent ones. The realization had hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't that I was incapable of surviving without them. It was that they were terrified I could. That was why I hadn't argued at lunch today. I saw the trap for what it was. Darlene wanted a fight. She wanted me to cry and beg so she could magnanimously forgive me and tighten the leash. By walking away, I had denied her the emotional payoff. I glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard. It was 2 p.m. My phone was buzzing in my purse on the passenger seat. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The silence period was over. They had expected me to turn around at the end of the street. Now that I had been gone for an hour, the panic would be setting in. Not panic for my safety, but panic that the puppet had cut its own strings. I wasn't just leaving a house, I was leaving a role. I was resigning from the position of family scapegoat. For months, I had been moving pieces on a chessboard they didn't even know existed. I had routed my mail to a P.O. box 3 towns over. I had opened a new bank account at a credit union that had no branches near my parents' house. I had slowly, methodically, moved my sentimental items, the few things that actually mattered to me, into a storage unit, smuggling them out in gym bags during casual visits. They thought I was drowning. They didn't know I had been building a raft. The exit today was not a spur-of-the-moment decision born of hurt feelings. It was the final step of a meticulously executed extraction plan. The help they offered was a loan with interest rates I could no longer afford to pay. The currency was my soul, and I was done making payments. I took the exit toward the city, toward the skyline that looked like gray, jagged teeth against the winter sky. My new life was waiting there. It wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. The loneliness would come. The doubt would try to creep back in, whispering that maybe I was wrong, maybe I was just being dramatic. But then I would remember the notebook. I would remember the way my mother looked when she told me I wouldn't survive. I wasn't going to just survive, I was going to erase them. I reached over and picked up my phone. The screen was lit up with a string of text messages from Tessa. "Where are you? Mom is crying. Don't be a brat. Come back and apologize." I didn't delete them. I took a screenshot. It was just more data for the file. Then, I turned the phone off. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I pressed my foot down on the accelerator, merging into the traffic of the city, disappearing into the sea of strangers where, for the first time, I was just Amber. Not Darlene's daughter, not Tessa's sister, just Amber, and that was enough. I did not turn off at the exit for my old apartment complex. That place, with its flimsy locks and the gate code my sister had memorized, was already a part of my past, even if my family did not know it yet. Instead, I drove 10 miles further south, into the heart of the business district, where the buildings were steel and glass and impersonal. I pulled my car into the underground parking garage of the Sovereign, a building that marketed itself on 2 things: luxury and anonymity. I had signed the lease 4 weeks ago under a nickname I had never used around my family. The rent was 30% higher than my old place, a sum that would make my father choke, but the building had a 24-hour concierge, key fob access for every elevator floor, and a policy that refused unannounced visitors. It was not just a home, it was a fortress. I parked in my assigned spot, 3 levels down. The silence here was different from the silence in the car. It was the silence of reinforced concrete. I popped the trunk and retrieved the last few items: my laptop bag and the black notebook I had retrieved from the spare tire well before leaving my parents' driveway. The physical move had been a surgical operation performed over the last 20 nights. I had not hired movers. Movers leave a paper trail, and they talk. Instead, I had moved box by box. Mostly after midnight, I had treated it like a smuggling run. My clothes, my documents, the jewelry my grandmother left me, and my hard drives were all here, organized and put away in the new closets. What I had left behind in the old apartment was deliberate. I left the sagging beige sofa my mother had forced on me. I left the dining table Tessa had guilted me into buying from her husband's friend. I left every single item that carried the psychic weight of their obligations. To the casual observer, the old apartment still looked lived in. It was a decoy, a stage set for a play I was no longer starring in. I took the elevator up to the 14th floor. The ride was smooth and silent. When I swiped my fob to open my door, the air inside was cool and smelled only of lemon polish and new paint. There was no scent of sage, no ghost of my mother's perfume. I did not unpack, because there was nothing to unpack. Everything was already in its place. Instead, I went straight to the desk I had set up facing the window. It was time to close the digital gates. I opened my laptop and began the protocol I had designed 2 months ago. Step 1 was location data. My family tracked me through a shared family circle app that my mother insisted was for safety. I had disabled the GPS permission on the drive over, but now I went further. I logged into the account and permanently removed my device. On their screens, my dot would simply freeze at the last known location, the interstate, and then vanish. Step 2 was the passwords. I did not just change them, I changed the logic behind them. My old passwords had been variations of birthdays or pet names, things my sister could guess in 3 tries. The new ones were alphanumeric strings generated by a security manager, impossible to memorize and impossible to guess. I cycled through my email, my social media, and my utility accounts. Then came the finances. I had already moved my savings, but that was just the surface. I logged into the websites of the 3 major credit bureaus. One by one, I placed a freeze on my credit report. My mother knew my social security number. She had used it years ago to open a joint account when I was in college, and she had never forgotten it. A credit freeze meant that if she tried to open a credit card in my name to help me build credit, or check my score to see if I was in trouble, she would hit a brick wall. I checked my phone. It was still off. I removed the SIM card and snapped it in half, dropping the pieces into the trash. It was a dramatic gesture. Perhaps, but necessary. That number was compromised. I took a brand new prepaid phone out of my desk drawer. I had activated it yesterday. Only 3 people had the number: the landlord, the emergency services, and my boss. That brought me to the most critical layer of my defense: my career. My family thought my job at North Vantage Systems was just administrative paper pushing. They did not understand that North Vantage handled logistics for defense contractors. The company culture was built on paranoia and protocol. I opened my secure work email. I had already drafted the message to the head of human resources and the chief of site security. I read it over one last time to ensure the tone was professional, not hysterical. Subject: Security update regarding employee Amber Walsh. To whom it may concern. Effective immediately. I am implementing a strict no-contact policy regarding my biological family. Individuals named Roy Walsh, Darlene Walsh, and Tessa Miller are not authorized to contact me at work, nor are they permitted entry to the premises for any reason. Please flag these names at the front desk. If they attempt to gain access or solicit information about my employment status, please treat it as a security breach and deny all requests. They may attempt to frame their inquiries as a family emergency. This is a false pretext. I have attached legal documentation of my identity and a cease and desist letter that is being mailed to them tomorrow. I hit send. I knew exactly what would happen when that email landed. In a normal company, it might spark gossip. At North Vantage, it would trigger a protocol. My file would be flagged. The receptionists, who were actually security contractors, would see a red warning pop up if my mother called. They would not be charmed by her worried mother act. They would cite company policy and hang up. I leaned back in my chair. The sun was setting, casting long, sharp shadows across my living room. I was not hiding. Hiding implies fear. I was fortifying. I was closing the ports of entry one by one. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a thick accordion folder. This was my insurance. Inside were the printouts from the notebook, the screenshots of Tessa's gaslighting texts, the bank statements showing unauthorized transfers my mother had made years ago by mistake, and the log of every time they had entered my home without permission. I had scanned everything and uploaded it to a cloud server with 2-factor authentication. If they tried to play the victim, if they tried to tell the world I was mentally unstable or incompetent, I had the timeline, I had the receipts. I walked to the window and looked down at the city streets below. The cars were small moving lights, disconnected from me. Somewhere out there, in the suburbs, my family was likely finishing dessert. They were probably shaking their heads, telling themselves I was currently crying in my car, driving aimlessly, terrified of the world they had told me I couldn't handle. They were waiting for the apology text. They were waiting for me to show up at the back door, humbled and broken. They had no idea that I was standing 14 floors up, behind a locked door they couldn't open, staring at a phone they couldn't ring, living a life they couldn't touch. I wasn't waiting for them to forgive me. I was waiting for them to realize that the silence wasn't a pause, it was a wall. And unlike the walls in their house, this one didn't have ears. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hand was steady. The silence in the apartment was absolute, and for the first time in my life, it didn't feel lonely. It felt like power. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for them to walk into the empty space I had left behind. The first 24 hours were a study in escalating frequency. I did not witness the panic in real time. Of course, I was sitting in my living room on the 14th floor, drinking tea and watching the city lights, completely insulated from the chaos I had ignited. But I had a window into their world, a one-way mirror I had carefully constructed. I had set up a dummy email address years ago, one that forwarded to my main account, which I had given to my mother for junk mail purposes. I also had access to the voicemail of my old phone number via an online portal before the account was fully terminated. I had not destroyed the access, only the device. I wanted the data. I needed to gauge their reaction time to know when to execute the next phase of my defense. It started predictably. At 7 o'clock on the evening of the holiday, 5 hours after I walked out, the texts began to pile up. They were casual at first. Annoyed little pings assuming I was sulking in a parking lot somewhere. "Stop being dramatic," Tessa wrote. "Mom is holding dessert." "Pick up the phone." My father texted. Disrespectful. By 9 o'clock, the tone shifted from annoyance to command. "Come back here right now." My mother wrote, "We need to talk about your attitude." I slept soundly that night. It was the first holiday in 10 years where I did not go to bed with a tension headache. The real show began the next morning. I checked the logs while eating breakfast. There were 14 missed calls from Darlene, 6 from Tessa, 2 from Roy, but it was the voicemail time-stamped at 10 in the morning that confirmed they had taken the bait. I clicked play on the audio file on my laptop. The sound of my mother's voice filled the room, but it was tinny, distant, stripped of its power to hurt me. "Amber?" Her voice was breathless, high-pitched. I could hear the echo of a hallway. "Amber, I am at your apartment. I used the spare key. The one I told you I lost last year. I just wanted to check on you. I brought you leftovers." I leaned back in my chair. There it was, the confession. She had lied about losing the key. She had kept it, waiting for a moment just like this to violate my privacy again. She had just handed me the legal leverage I needed, recorded and date-stamped. The recording continued, and the tone shifted from confusion to a shrill, rising panic. "Where are your clothes? I am looking in your closet, and it is empty. The hangers are on the floor. Where is your winter coat? Where is the jewelry box Grandma gave you?" There was a pause, a rustling sound, like she was yanking drawers open. "The furniture is here," she said, sounding bewildered. "That ugly sofa I gave you is here. The table Tessa found for you is here. But everything else, the pictures, the books, the computer." Then a gasp. "You moved out?" The question was a whisper. Then it became a scream. "You moved out. How could you move out? You were at dinner yesterday. You didn't say anything. Roy, she is gone. The place is stripped." The voicemail cut off. I felt a cold, grim satisfaction. They were standing in the middle of the stage set I had left behind. They were looking at the physical manifestation of our relationship. A room full of things they had forced upon me, devoid of anything that actually made me Amber. I had left behind their baggage and taken my life. It must have been a terrifying sight for them. It was a reflection of exactly how much I valued their contributions. By noon, the narrative had shifted again. Since they could not reach me, and they could not find me, they decided to control the public perception of my disappearance. I logged into a burner social media account I used to monitor the local community pages. There it was. Tessa had posted a photo of the 3 of them, Mom, Dad, and herself, smiling at a previous holiday. The caption read, "Family is everything. Even when people lose their way and push away those who love them most, please keep my sister Amber in your prayers. She is going through a severe mental health crisis right now and has cut off contact. We are just so worried about her stability. If you see her, please let us know she is loved." It was a masterclass in character assassination. In 3 sentences, she had painted me as unstable, ungrateful, and dangerous, while positioning herself and our parents as the saintly victims. The comments were already flooding in. "So sorry to hear this. Tessa, praying for her return. Mental illness is so hard on the family." I did not comment. I did not react. In the past, I would have called her, screaming, begging her to take it down, trying to explain the truth. That was what she wanted. She wanted the engagement. She wanted the fight. My silence was a vacuum she didn't know how to fill. Then came the threats. At 2 in the afternoon, my father left a voicemail. His voice was different from Mom's. It was cold, controlled, the voice he used when he was negotiating a business deal he was losing. "Amber, this has gone on long enough. Your mother is sick with worry. She is lying down with a cold compress. You are killing her. Do you hear me? You are killing your mother." He paused, waiting for the guilt to travel through the phone line and choke me. When I didn't interrupt, because it was a recording, he continued. "We are going to call the police. We are going to file a missing person report. And if that doesn't work, I am calling your office. I will speak to your boss. I will tell them you are having a breakdown and need a leave of absence. We will come get you. Amber, you are not capable of handling this on your own." The old Amber would have been paralyzed. The threat of the police, the threat of my employer finding out, it would have sent me running back to them just to make it stop. But the new Amber, the one sitting in a fortress on the 14th floor, just took a sip of tea. He was bluffing, of course, but even if he wasn't, he was walking into a minefield. I had already visited the local police precinct 3 days ago. I had spoken to the desk sergeant, a kind woman with tired eyes. I had shown her my ID and handed her a notarized letter stating that I was a 33-year-old woman of sound mind who was voluntarily severing contact with an abusive family. I told her that my parents might try to file a false missing person report as a harassment tactic. She had scanned the letter into the system and added a note to my file. If they called 911, the dispatcher would see the flag. The police would not come looking for me. They would likely tell my father to stop wasting resources. As for my job, the email I sent yesterday had already detonated that bridge. If Roy Walsh called North Vantage Systems, he wouldn't get my boss. He would get the head of security, who would inform him that soliciting information about an employee was a violation of privacy laws and that further calls would be reported as harassment. They were firing their biggest guns, and they were shooting blanks. I watched the sun begin to dip lower in the sky. The frantic energy coming from my laptop screen, the texts, the calls, the notifications, felt like a storm trapped inside a glass jar. I was on the outside, observing the weather but not feeling the rain. Another text from Tessa popped up on the virtual log. "I know you are reading this. You are so selfish. Dad is going to call the landlord of your old place and find out where you moved. You can't hide." I laughed out loud. It was a dry, rusty sound. They really didn't understand. They thought I was playing hide and seek. They didn't realize I was playing chess. My old landlord didn't know where I moved. I had given him a forwarding address to a post office box in a town 40 miles west of here, a town I had never set foot in. If they drove there, they would find a metal box in a strip mall. For the first time in my life, I saw them not as giants, but as toddlers throwing a tantrum in a locked room. They were banging on the walls, screaming for attention, breaking their own toys, while I stood on the other side of the glass, holding the key. They were panicking because the script had changed. The role of submissive daughter had been deleted from the cast list, and they didn't know how to improvise. I closed the laptop. The screen went black, cutting off the stream of their desperation. The room was quiet again. I stood up and walked to the kitchen to start dinner. I was going to make something spicy, something with garlic and chili, the kind of food my mother hated and never allowed in her house. I was not afraid of what they would do next. I was curious, because every move they made, every voicemail they left, every lie they posted, was just another brick in the wall I was building to keep them out forever. They were doing the work for me, and they didn't even know it. 72 hours after I walked out of my mother's house, I decided to break the silence. This was not a surrender, it was a tactical maneuver. I had watched them spin in the wind long enough to know they were becoming desperate, and desperate people make sloppy mistakes. But desperate people can also be dangerous if they feel they have nothing left to lose. I needed to let the steam out of the pressure cooker, but only on my terms. I picked up the burner phone. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday. I knew my father would be at his office, pretending to work while likely staring at his cell phone. I knew my mother would be at home, pacing the kitchen, waiting for the police to call her back. I dialed my father's number. He answered on the first ring. "Amber?" His voice was a mixture of relief and fury, a guttural sound that vibrated against my ear. "Where the hell are you? Do you have any idea what you have put your mother through?" "I am safe," I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the trembling apology he was expecting. "That is the only update you are getting regarding my location." "Safe?" he shouted. "You are missing. We went to your apartment. It is empty. We thought you were kidnapped. We thought—" "You did not think I was kidnapped. Dad," I cut in. "You saw that I had packed. Kidnappers do not help you fold your sweaters and box up your books. You knew I left. You just did not like that I did it without your permission." There was a silence on the line, the stunned silence of a man who was used to being the loudest voice in the room. "Put Mom on the line," I said. "I know you are likely conferencing her in right now." I heard a click, and then my mother's ragged breathing filled the speaker. "Amber," she sobbed. It was a wet, heavy sound. "Amber, baby, please, just tell us where you are. I will come get you. We can fix this." "There is nothing to fix," I said. "And you are not coming to get me. I am calling to tell you that I am alive, I am employed, and I am healthy. I am also calling to address the fact that you broke into my former apartment." "Broke in?" Darlene's voice sharpened, the tears vanishing instantly. "I am your mother. I was checking on you. I had a key." "A key you stole," I corrected her. "A key you told me you lost. That is not checking on me. Mom, that is trespassing. And frankly, the voicemail you left admitting to it is all the evidence I need if I decided to press charges." "You would arrest your own mother?" she gasped. "After everything I have done for you?" "I would protect my privacy," I said. "But we are not going to do this over the phone. If you want to see me, if you want proof of life, so you can stop posting lies on Facebook about my mental health, we can meet." "Yes," my father said immediately. "Come to the house. Tonight. Dinner." "No," I said. "I am never stepping foot in that house again. We will meet at the Bean and Leaf on 4th Street, the one downtown, 2 o'clock this afternoon." "That is ridiculous," my mother scoffed. "Why would we meet at a coffee shop? It is impersonal. It is loud." "Exactly," I said. "It is public. There are witnesses, and there are exits. Those are my conditions. 2 o'clock. If you are late, or if you bring Tessa, I leave. And if you try to follow me when I leave, I will file a restraining order before the sun goes down." I hung up before they could argue. I spent the next 3 hours preparing for the meeting as if I were preparing for a board presentation. I showered and dressed in a charcoal gray suit I usually wore for meetings with high-level vendors. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. I applied makeup, not to look pretty, but to look armored. Sharp eyeliner, matte lipstick. I looked like a woman who managed logistics for a defense contractor, not a wayward daughter who needed a loan. I arrived at the coffee shop at 1:45. I ordered a black coffee and chose a table in the center of the room. It was perfect. To my right was a group of college students debating philosophy. To my left, 2 police officers were on their break. The place was buzzing with the safety of strangers. At 1:58, the door opened. They looked terrible. That was my first thought. My mother, usually impeccable in her matching sets and pearls, looked frayed. Her hair was slightly flat on one side, and her eyes were swollen. My father looked gray, his shoulders slumped in his expensive coat. They scanned the room frantically. their eyes passing over me twice before they realized who I was. I did not stand up when they approached. I gestured to the two empty chairs opposite me. "Hello?" I said. My mother practically collapsed into the chair. She reached across the table to grab my hands. I pulled them back, placing them flat on the table, out of reach. "Amber," she whispered, "look at you. You look so hard." "I look like an adult," I said. "Where are you staying?" my father demanded. Skipping the pleasantries, he did not sit. He stood over the table, trying to use his height to intimidate me. It was a tactic that had worked when I was 12. It did not work now. "Sit down, Dad," I said, keeping my voice low. "You are causing a scene, and the officers at the table next to us are watching you." He glanced to his left, saw the uniforms, and sat down immediately. "Tell us where you are," he hissed, leaning in. "This game is over. You have made your point. You scared us. Congratulations. Now pack your things and come home so we can help you get back on your feet." "I am on my feet," I said. "I am standing quite firmly, and I am not telling you where I live because you have proven that you cannot respect a locked door." "That is different," Darlene pleaded. "We were worried. You just vanished. What kind of daughter does that to her family?" "The kind of daughter who is told to leave," I replied. "You told me to get out. Mom, you stood up at holiday lunch and told me to stop relying on the family. You kicked me out. I just followed your instructions." Darlene flushed. "I didn't mean it like that. I was trying to motivate you. It was tough love." "Well, it worked," I said. "I am motivated. I am so motivated that I have completely separated my life from yours. You cannot survive without us." Tessa's voice echoed in my head. Though she wasn't there, my father seemed to be channeling her. "How are you paying for this new place?" he asked suspiciously. "Did you take out a payday loan? Did you get a credit card? You are going to ruin your financial future. And then who is going to have to bail you out?" "Me." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "I have not taken out any loans. My salary is sufficient. In fact, now that I am not buying Tessa's old furniture or paying for family dinners that I'm forced to host, I have more disposable income than I have ever had." "We give you things," Mom cried out, her voice rising. A student at the next table looked over. "We give you everything." "You give me obligations," I corrected. "And you give me guilt. I am done with both." I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was not the full dossier I had compiled. They were not ready for that yet. It was a simple bulleted list. "These are the new rules," I said, sliding the paper across the scratched wooden table. My father looked at it with disdain, refusing to touch it. "Rules? You do not give us rules. Amber, we are your parents." "Then we have nothing else to discuss," I said, feigning a move to stand up. "Fine," he snapped. He put a hand on the paper. "Read it. Darlene." My mother picked it up, her hands trembling slightly. "Item 1, she read aloud, her voice wavering. "No unannounced visits to my home or workplace. If you attempt to find my address, I will cease all contact for 6 months." She looked up at me, hurt swimming in her eyes. "You would hide from your own mother?" "Read the next one," I said. "Item 2, she read. "No contacting my employer for any reason. Item 3, no negative posts about me on social media. The post Tessa made must be removed by 5 o'clock today, or I will post a rebuttal with the voicemail of you admitting to breaking into my apartment." Darlene paled. She knew what that would do to her reputation in the church group. A mother breaking and entering? It was not a good look. "And finally, I said, pointing to the last line. "Item 4, she whispered. "All future communication will be via email or scheduled phone calls. No text bombing, no voicemail floods." She dropped the paper. "This is a contract. This isn't a relationship. This is a business deal." "It is a boundary," I said. "Something this family has never understood. You have 2 choices right now. You can agree to this, and we can have a polite, distant relationship where we see each other on major holidays in neutral locations, Or you can refuse, and I will walk out that door and you will never see me again. I will change my name if I have to. I will move to a different state. I have the resources, and I have the will." My father stared at me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something new in his eyes. It wasn't respect, exactly. It was fear. He was realizing that the leverage he thought he had, money, guilt, shame, was gone. He was looking at a stranger. "You are being cruel," he said. "I am being clear," I replied. "If we agree to this," Darlene said, wiping her eyes, "will you come to Christmas dinner?" "No," I said. "I have plans for Christmas." "What plans?" she demanded. "Who are you spending it with?" "That falls under the category of my private life," I said, "which is no longer your concern." I checked my watch. "I have to get back to work." "But we haven't even talked," Mom wailed. "I haven't told you about Aunt Linda's surgery. I haven't told you about Tessa's promotion." "Send me an email," I said. I stood up. I smoothed down the front of my suit. I felt light. I felt tall. "Please remove Tessa's post by 5, I reminded them. "I have the audio file ready to upload. And Dad, do not try to follow me. I parked 4 blocks away and took a cab here. You won't find my car." I turned and walked away. I did not look back to see if they were crying. I did not look back to see if they were angry. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the bright, cold afternoon sun. I had anticipated that they would scream. I had anticipated they would threaten me. I had prepared for a battle. But what I hadn't fully realized until that moment was how small they actually were when I stopped kneeling. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was an email notification. I checked it as I walked down the block. "Tessa Miller has deleted a post." I smiled. Phase 1 was complete. I had established the perimeter. Now, I just had to wait for them to try and dig under the fence, because I knew they would. They couldn't help themselves. Control was an addiction, and they were going through withdrawal, but I was the rehab center, and the doors were locked from the inside. The peace I felt after the coffee shop meeting lasted exactly 48 hours. It was a fragile, glass-thin silence that shattered on a Thursday afternoon. I had foolishly believed that my display of dominance at the cafe had cowed them. I thought my father's fear and my mother's embarrassment were genuine deterrents. I was looking at the situation through the lens of a rational person who negotiates to minimize loss. But I had forgotten the fundamental rule of narcissists. When they lose control, they do not retreat. They scorch the earth. It started with an email from my sister, Tessa. Subject: closing the loop. Amber, Mom and Dad are a mess. They want to agree to your terms, but Mom is hysterical about not saying a proper goodbye. She has a box of your childhood photos and your birth certificate. She wants to give them to you. Meet us at the park by the river. Just 10 minutes, then we leave you alone. I stared at the screen, my birth certificate. It was the one document I had failed to secure during my extraction. I needed it. And the photos? It was a classic emotional lure. I should have known better. I should have seen the hook hidden inside the worm. But the part of me that was still a daughter, the part I was trying to excise, whispered that maybe they were finally accepting defeat. I agreed to meet them at 5 o'clock. The park was open, populated by joggers and mothers with strollers. It felt safe. I was wrong. When I arrived, they were sitting on a bench near the fountain. All 3 of them. Tessa was there, which was the first violation of my boundaries, but I decided to let it slide for the sake of getting my documents. As I approached, the atmosphere felt wrong. It was too staged. My mother was clutching a shoebox to her chest like a shield. My father was standing behind the bench, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. Tessa was sitting next to Mom, holding her phone. "I am here for the box," I said, stopping 6 feet away, "and then I am leaving." "Amber," Tessa said. Her voice was soft, too soft. It was the voice one uses for a frightened animal or a psychiatric patient. "We are just so glad you came. We have been so worried about your state of mind." "My state of mind is fine," I said. "Hand over the box, Mom." Darlene looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "I just do not understand. Amber, Why are you doing this? We love you so much. Why are you making up these stories? Stories? I asked. About the break-ins, Tessa interjected, shifting her phone slightly. I noticed the camera lens was pointed directly at me. The red recording light was not on, but the app was open. She was recording audio. You know Mom never broke into your apartment. You have been imagining things lately. Remember when you thought someone was following you last year? You are paranoid. Amber. My blood ran cold. They were not here to say goodbye. They were building a case. They were trying to provoke me into an outburst, record it, and use it to validate their narrative that I was mentally unstable. I have the voicemail. Tessa, I said, keeping my voice monotone. I have Mom on tape admitting she used the key. You misunderstood her, Dad rumbled from behind the bench. She was confused. You are twisting her words because you are sick. We want to get you help. We have found a facility. A facility? I laughed. A sharp, incredulous sound. You think you can commit me? We think you are a danger to yourself, Tessa said, her voice gaining a theatrical edge. Look at you. You are thin. You are shaking. You are cutting off everyone who loves you. Those are classic signs of a breakdown. I was not shaking. I was standing perfectly still, but I realized that if I yelled, if I snatched the box, if I showed even a flicker of anger, they would have what they needed. I am not playing this game, I said. Keep the photos, keep the birth certificate. I can order a new copy from the state for $20. I turned to leave. If you walk away, my father's voice boomed, dropping the pretense of concern. You are proving us right. You are running away because you cannot handle reality. I stopped and turned back. I looked at my mother, who was now weeping silently, a performance perfected over decades. I am not running, I said. I am resigning. There is a difference. I am sorry we failed you, Mom sobbed. But then came the twist, the knife in the ribs. I am sorry we spoiled you so much that you turned into this cold, heartless person. We gave you everything, and you threw it in our faces. It was a fake apology wrapped in an accusation. You gave me nothing but anxiety, I said, and now I am giving it back. I walked away. I heard Tessa calling my name, trying to get me to turn around, trying to get the money shot for her video. I kept walking until I reached my car. My hands were trembling then, not from fear, but from rage. I drove back to my sanctuary, the Sovereign. I poured a glass of wine and tried to calm my racing heart. I told myself I had won again. I had refused to engage. I had denied them the reaction they craved. But at 8 o'clock that evening, my work phone pinged. It was an automated notification from the North Vantage server. Priority flag. External communication regarding personnel security. My stomach dropped. I logged into the secure portal. There was an email in my inbox, forwarded by the head of human resources. The subject line was simply, "Concerned family member." I opened it, and the floor seemed to drop out from under my apartment. To the management of North Vantage Systems. We are writing to you with heavy hearts to inform you of a delicate situation regarding your employee, Amber Walsh, as her family. We feel a moral obligation to warn you that Amber is currently in the midst of a severe manic episode involving substance abuse. She has stolen significant funds from our family accounts and has made threats of violence against us. We believe she is using her position at your company to hide from the consequences of her actions. We are worried that her instability poses a security risk to your firm, given the sensitive nature of your work. She has been erratic, paranoid, and we have reason to believe she is compromising company data to fund her addiction. Please, we are not asking for her to be punished, but she needs professional help, not a paycheck that fuels her spiraling behavior. We beg you to intervene before she hurts herself or someone else. Sincerely, the Walsh family. I read it twice, then a third time. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, that I couldn't even breathe. They weren't just trying to annoy me, they were trying to destroy me. They knew that in my industry, an accusation of substance abuse and theft Even an unproven one was a career death sentence. A security clearance could be revoked pending investigation. I could be suspended. I could lose the income that allowed me to escape them. That was the plan. Cut off the money. Cut off the stability. Force me to come crawling back to the guest room with the floral wallpaper because I had nowhere else to go. They were willing to burn my life to the ground just to rule over the ashes. My phone rang. It was the head of HR. "Amber," she said. Her voice was professional, cool. "We need to talk about an email we just received." "I saw it," I said. My voice sounded mechanical. "It is retaliation. I warned you about this." "I know you did," she said. "And that is the only reason security has not already escorted you out of the building remotely. But these are serious accusations. Amber, substance abuse, theft. We have to investigate. It is protocol." "I understand," I said. "I will submit to a drug test immediately. I will open my bank records for you. I will prove it is a lie." "Do that," she said. "But until the results are back, your clearance is suspended. You are on paid administrative leave starting tomorrow morning." The line went dead. I sat in the dark. The city lights outside blurred into streaks of angry neon. They had crossed the final line. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was war. They wanted me to be the unstable, helpless failure. Fine, I wouldn't be that, but I wouldn't be the victim either. I opened my laptop. I didn't go to my work email. I went to the encrypted folder labeled Evidence. I had been holding back. I had been trying to be civil, trying to just leave quietly, but they didn't want quiet. They wanted noise. I looked at the file labeled Grandmother's Trust. It was the one secret weapon I had never used, the one thing my mother was terrified I would look into. She thought I didn't know about the money Grandma left for my education that never appeared. She thought I didn't know about the forged signature on the release form from 10 years ago. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved but never used. "Walsh Legal Services," a voice answered. It wasn't a relative. It was a shark I had researched weeks ago. "My name is Amber Walsh," I said. "I want to retain you for a defamation suit, and I want to report a case of embezzlement involving a family trust." The tears were gone. The shaking was gone. "I am listening," the lawyer said. "They want to talk about stolen money?" I whispered to the empty room. "Let's talk about it." The morning after my suspension began. I did not stay in bed. I did not cry. I did not stare at the ceiling wondering why my own flesh and blood wanted to destroy my livelihood. Instead, I woke up at 6 o'clock, made a pot of strong black coffee, and turned my apartment into a war room. My suspension was paid, which meant my family had inadvertently given me 40 hours a week of free time to dedicate entirely to their dismantling. They had intended to cripple me with shame and financial terror. Instead, they had handed me the one resource I had been lacking: time. My first task was the follow-up with human resources. I had already gone to the lab at 7 in the morning for the drug screening. I paid for the expedited processing, costing me $150 out of pocket, so the results would be on my boss's desk within 24 hours. The panel would come back clean, squeaky clean. I didn't even take ibuprofen. I sat at my desk and composed a formal affidavit for the company's legal department. I attached the police report number from my visit to the precinct. I attached the audio file of my mother admitting to the break-in. I attached the screenshot of Tessa's deleted social media post claiming I was mentally ill. To the investigation committee, I wrote, "The email sent to you was a malicious fabrication designed to leverage company policy as a tool of domestic abuse. The senders are currently under investigation for harassment. I am providing this evidence to clear my name and to request that North Vantage Systems flag all future external communications from these individuals as security threats." I hit send. That was the shield. Now, it was time for the sword. At 10 o'clock, I walked into the office of Elias Thorne. He was not a family lawyer. He was a litigator who specialized in corporate defamation and high-conflict civil suits. His office smelled of leather and intimidation. I had liquidated a small portion of my savings to pay his retainer, a sum of $5,000. But as I sat across from him and watched him read the email my family had sent to my employer, I knew it was worth every penny. He didn't look sympathetic. He looked hungry. "This is actionable," he said, tapping the printed email with a gold pen. "They have accused you of a felony, theft, and substance abuse in a written communication to a third party, resulting in professional damages. That is textbook libel per se. We do not even have to prove you lost money, though the suspension proves you did. We just have to prove they lied." "They lied," I said, "and I want them to stop." "We will send a cease and desist letter first," Thorne explained. "It is the warning shot. We outline the potential damages. We cite the statutes. We demand a retraction of the statement to your employer and a permanent cessation of contact. If they breach it, we file the lawsuit." "Do it," I said. "Send it certified mail. I want them to have to sign for it. I want them to have to look a mail carrier in the eye and accept the consequences of their actions." By noon, the letter was drafted. It was a thing of beauty. It stripped away all the "we love you" and "we are worried" rhetoric my family hid behind and laid their actions bare in cold, legal terminology, harassment, defamation, tortious interference with business relations. It demanded they preserve all electronic communications, meaning if Tessa tried to delete her texts, she would be destroying evidence. I left the law office feeling lighter than I had in years. The law does not care about guilt trips. The law does not care that Darlene Walsh carried me in her womb for 9 months. The law only cares about facts, and for the first time, the facts were weapons I could hold. My next stop was back at the Sovereign. I went straight to the concierge desk. The head of security, a man named Marcus, who looked like he could bench press a small car, greeted me. "Ms. Walsh," he said. "Everything all right?" "I need to update my guest list," I said. I handed him a manila envelope. Inside were 3 high-resolution color photographs, one of Roy, one of Darlene, one of Tessa. "These individuals are to be permanently barred from the premises," I told him. "They are not allowed in the lobby. They are not allowed in the garage. If they attempt to gain entry, do not call me. Call the police and have them trespassed." Marcus looked at the photos, then at me. He didn't ask questions. He didn't say, "But that looks like your mother." He just nodded. "Understood. I will distribute these to the night shift as well. They won't get past the front door." "They might try to lie," I warned. "They might say there is an emergency. They might say I am sick." "Ms. Walsh," Marcus said, his voice low and reassuring, "unless you call down and tell me otherwise, these people do not exist to us." I took the elevator up to the 14th floor. The fortress was complete. The drawbridge was up. That afternoon, I made the phone calls I had been dreading. I called my friend Jen, who had been at the barbecue last year where my father had publicly berated me for my choice of car. I called my cousin Sarah, the only one in the extended family who saw through the dynamic, who had witnessed Tessa spreading rumors about me at her wedding. "I need you to write it down." I told them, "I need a character statement. I need you to attest that you have witnessed a pattern of controlling and abusive behavior." Jen didn't hesitate. "I have been waiting for you to ask me this for 5 years, she said. "I will write it tonight." Sarah was quieter. "My mom will kill me if she finds out I helped you," she whispered. "Aunt Darlene is on a warpath. She is calling everyone. Amber, she is telling people you have joined a cult." "A cult?" I asked, almost laughing. "She says this new behavior is brainwashing. She says you are being isolated by a group." "I am being isolated by a lawyer and a security guard," I said. "If that is a cult, sign me up. Can you write the statement, Sarah, or are you too afraid?" There was a long pause. "I will write it," she said. "But do not tell them it came from me until you have to." "Deal," I said. By 6 o'clock that evening, I had initiated the final phase of my defense, the ghost protocol. I had been monitoring them. I had been checking the voicemail logs, checking the burner social media accounts. I had been feeding my own anxiety by watching theirs. I stopped. I deactivated the burner email. I deleted the access to the old voicemail. I deleted the burner social media profile. I was no longer observing the experiment. I was walking out of the lab. If they posted about me, I wouldn't know. If they left screaming messages, I wouldn't hear them. If they drove past my old apartment, I wouldn't see it. I cooked dinner, salmon with asparagus, and ate it in silence. I read a book. I went to bed early. For 3 days, nothing happened. The silence was heavy, but it was different this time. It wasn't the silence of holding my breath. It was the silence of a held siege. I knew exactly what was happening on the other side of town. The certified letter would have arrived on Friday morning. I imagined the scene, the mail carrier ringing the doorbell, my father signing for it, expecting maybe a package or a bill, opening the thick, creamy envelope with the letterhead of Thorne, Sterling and Associates, reading the words, cease and desist, defamation, litigation. I imagined the heir leaving the room. I imagined Darlene crying. Not her fake manipulative tears, but real tears of shock. They had pushed the button labeled nuclear, expecting me to disintegrate. Instead, the missile had turned around in midair and was currently pointing at their front porch. They were realizing that the rules of the family, where they were the judges and the jury, did not apply in the United States legal system. They were realizing that their concern looked a lot like harassment to a judge. On Saturday morning, my lawyer called. "We got a response," Thorne said. He sounded amused. "Did they hire a lawyer?" I asked. "No," Thorne said. "Your father called my office. He was spirited. He tried to tell my paralegal that this was a private family matter and that I had no right to interfere. He demanded to speak to me to set the record straight." "What did you tell him?" "I didn't speak to him," Thorne said. "My paralegal reminded him that since he is not represented by counsel, and we are representing you in a potential lawsuit against him, all communication must be in writing. She told him that if he continues to call, we will add telephone harassment to the complaint." "And?" He hung up. But here's the interesting part. Amber, 10 minutes later, we got an email from an address belonging to your sister. It was just a scan of the signed acknowledgement of receipt. No text, no apology, just the signature. "They are scared," I said. "They are terrified," Thorne agreed. "Bullies usually are when someone hits back. The retraction letter to your employer hasn't arrived yet, but I suspect it will be there by Monday. They know they crossed the line with the embezzlement accusation. That is jail time territory. And your father is a businessman. He knows the risk." I hung up the phone and looked out the window. It was a gray, overcast day, but I felt like the sun was shining. I had done it. I had stopped the machine. I had built a wall so high and so thick that they couldn't climb it, couldn't shout over it, and couldn't break it down. I spent the weekend living a normal life. I went to a museum. I went grocery shopping without fearing I would run into a cousin who would report back to headquarters. I was reclaiming the space in my brain that they had rented for free for 30 years. But on Sunday night, as I was preparing for bed, a thought nagged at me. It was a small, cold thought. It was too quiet. My family was reactive. They were emotional. The legal threat would scare them. Yes, but it wouldn't stop them forever. It would only force them to change tactics. They couldn't attack my character anymore. Tessa had deleted the posts. They couldn't attack my job anymore. The retraction would kill that angle. They couldn't attack my physical peace. The security guards and the police report handled that. So what was left? They needed leverage. They needed something to dangle. Something to force me to come to the table not as an equal, but as a supplicant. I lay in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. I ran through the inventory of my life. My car was in my name. My lease was in my name. My bank accounts were secure. And then I remembered the one thing I hadn't secured. The one thing I had been avoiding because it was too messy, too complicated. And frankly, I had hoped I wouldn't need it. The trust. My grandmother, Darlene's mother, had died when I was 22. She was a sharp, acerbic woman who saw through Darlene's facade better than anyone. She had left a significant sum of money in a trust for the education and advancement of her grandchildren. I had never seen a dime of it. When I wanted to go to grad school, my mother had told me there wasn't enough money in the pot, that the market had been bad, that the administrative fees had eaten it up. I had believed her. I had taken out loans instead. But I knew, deep down, that the math didn't add up. Grandma was rich. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering a warning rhythm against my ribs. If they were cornered, if they felt their control slipping away, they wouldn't just surrender. They would look for the last chain they held, and if the chain was broken, they would try to use it as a whip. My mother had mentioned the family assets in one of her early voicemails, the ones I had deleted. She had said something about how I was walking away from my inheritance. I realized then that the war wasn't over. I had won the battle for my freedom, but the battle for the truth, the expensive, ugly truth, was just about to begin. They had one card left to play, and it was the one card that could turn my legal victory into a financial hostage situation. I reached for my phone and made a note to call Thorne first thing in the morning. I needed to do more than just sue them for libel. I needed to audit them. The silence outside was still peaceful, but inside my head, the drums were starting to beat again. They were going to come for the money. I just had to make sure I got there first. Monday arrived with the sterile precision of a blade. My suspension from North Vantage Systems was still active, but the atmosphere had shifted. My lawyer, Elias Thorne, had forwarded the defamation lawsuit threat to my parents on Friday, and by Monday morning, the retraction letter had arrived at my company's Human Resources Department. It was signed by my father. It was brief, humiliated, and legally binding. It stated that the previous allegations regarding substance abuse and theft were misunderstandings born of family stress and should be disregarded. It was enough to get my security clearance reinstated, though the damage to my reputation would take longer to scrub away. I should have felt relief. I should have felt triumphant, but as I sat in my apartment, staring at the digital copy of the retraction, I knew it was too easy. My father was a man who negotiated contracts for a living. He knew when to fold a losing hand, but he also knew how to cheat when the dealer wasn't looking. The retaliatory strike did not come through a lawyer. It came, predictably, through an emotional channel they thought I could not block. At 2 p.m, a courier arrived at the Sovereign. He was carrying a large, padded envelope addressed to me. Because it was not on the banned list, it wasn't a person, Marcus at the front desk called me to approve it. I told him to send it up. Inside the envelope was not a bomb, but something far more volatile. It was a handwritten letter from Darlene, written on her personalized stationery, the heavy cream kind she ordered from a boutique in Charleston. Amber, it began, the loops of her handwriting aggressive and sharp. Your father forced me to sign that letter to your boss. He says we have to play by your rules now because you have a fancy lawyer. But you need to understand something. You are playing a dangerous game. You think you can sue us? You think you can hurt this family? If you do not drop this lawsuit and come home to apologize by Friday, I am removing you from the family completely. And that includes the investment fund Nana Rose left for you. I have been holding on to it, protecting it, letting it grow for your future. But since you have no future with us, you have no future with this money. I will dissolve the account and use it to pay for the therapy I need after what you have done to me. I read the letter twice. The second time, I laughed. My mother had just made a tactical error so colossal that it bordered on catastrophic. She had just admitted, in writing, to the existence of the Nana Rose Fund. For 10 years, that fund had been a ghost. My grandmother, Rose, had passed away when I was 23. She was a woman of steel and secrets, and she had despised the way Darlene tried to mold me. On her deathbed, she had squeezed my hand and whispered that she had left me a nest egg. But when the will was read, Darlene was the executor. She told me the nest egg was just a few $1,000s and that she had put it into a family aggressive growth fund to help it mature. Whenever I asked about it, Darlene would wave her hand and say, "It is complicated. Amber, the market is down. Do not worry about it. I am handling it." I was young. I was conditioned to trust them. I believed her. But now, I was 33, and I had a lawyer who ate sharks for breakfast. I scanned the letter and emailed it to Elias Thorne immediately. Then I called him. "She just threatened to steal my inheritance," I said when he picked up. "I am looking at it," Thorne said. I could hear the smile in his voice. "She explicitly states she is going to dissolve the account. Amber, do you have any documentation on this trust?" "No," I said. "She never gave me any. She said she was the trustee." "If you are the beneficiary and you are over the age of 21, you have a right to see the accounting," Thorne said. "Do you know which bank holds it?" "I remember seeing a statement on her desk once," I said, closing my eyes, digging through the memory palace of my trauma. It was blue. The logo was a lighthouse, Beacon Trust and Savings. "I know them," Thorne said. "I will draft a demand letter for an immediate accounting of the trust assets. But honestly, Amber, if she is threatening to liquidate it, we might need to move faster than a letter. We might need to go there." "I will go," I said. "I will go right now." I drove to the downtown branch of Beacon Trust and Savings. I wore my suit. I carried my birth certificate, the new copy I had expedited, and my driver's license. I did not feel like the scared girl who used to ask her mother for $20 to buy gas. I felt like an auditor. I sat in the office of a branch manager named Mr. Henderson. He was a kind, elderly man who looked at my ID and then tapped away at his computer. "Yes, Ms. Walsh," he said. "Here it is. The Rose Miller Testamentary Trust. Beneficiary, Amber Walsh. Trustee, Darlene Walsh." "I would like to see the transaction history," I said, "for the last 10 years. Mr. Henderson frowned. "Technically, the statements go to the trustee, but as the sole beneficiary of a vested trust, yes, I can print a summary." The printer whirred. It was a slow, rhythmic sound that seemed to count down the seconds to my mother's destruction. Mr. Henderson handed me a stack of paper about an inch thick. I looked at the bottom line first. The current balance was $12,450. "Is that right?" I asked, my stomach tightening. My grandmother was not a poor woman. The initial deposit 10 years ago was $150,000. Mr. Henderson said softly. He looked uncomfortable. $150,000. That money could have paid for my graduate school. It could have been the down payment on a house. It could have been my freedom 10 years ago. "Where did it go?" I asked. I flipped through the pages. The history was a litany of theft. July, 7 years ago. Withdrawal of $8,000. Memo. Home repairs. September, 5 years ago. Withdrawal of $25,000. Memo. Wedding expenses. My breath hitched. That was Tessa's wedding. My mother had paid for Tessa's perfect day with my money. January, 3 years ago. Withdrawal of $15,000. Memo. Vehicle purchase. That was the year my father bought his new truck. They had treated my inheritance like a slush fund. They had stripped my future to pave their present, and the entire time, they had called me a leech. They had called me dependent. They had shamed me for eating their food and sitting on their furniture, while they were living off the interest, and the principal, of a gift that was never meant for them. "This is illegal," I whispered. "If these expenses were not for your benefit," Mr. Henderson said carefully, "then yes, it would appear to be a breach of fiduciary duty." I stood up. My legs felt steady, anchored by the weight of the truth I was holding. "Can she close this account?" I asked. "As the trustee, she has the authority to withdraw funds," Mr. Henderson said, "unless there is a court order stopping her." "Thank you," I said. I walked out of the bank and sat in my car. I called Thorne. "It is gone," I said. "Most of it. They spent over $130,000 of my money. They paid for Tessa's wedding with it. They renovated their kitchen with it." "That is embezzlement," Thorne said. His voice was cold and hard. "That is criminal fraud. Amber, we can have the police pick her up for this." "No," I said. A dark, cold idea was forming in my mind. "Not yet." "Why not?" Because she sent me that letter, I said. She threatened to dissolve the rest of it by Friday. She thinks it is her money. She doesn't know I have seen the records. So? So let her do it, I said. Let her walk into that bank and withdraw the last $12,000. Let her put it in her personal checking account. Let her prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she intends to steal every last cent. You want to set a trap, Thorne said. I want her to hang herself, I replied. If we stop her now, she will claim the other spending was misunderstood, or that she was reimbursing herself for raising me. She will muddy the waters. But if she drains the account after receiving a legal threat, that is malice. That is theft. It is risky, Thorne warned. You might lose that $12,000. I have already lost $130,000, I said. I am willing to lose the rest to see her in handcuffs. Okay, Thorne said. I will draft the filing, but I won't submit it to the court until Friday afternoon. We will let her make her move. I hung up. I looked at the bank statement in my lap. I looked at the entry for Tessa's wedding. $25,000. I remembered that wedding. I remembered Tessa making me stand in the back because my dress wasn't chic enough. I remembered my mother telling me I should be grateful to be invited. I had paid for the champagne they toasted with. I had paid for the band they danced to. I drove back to the Sovereign. I did not feel sad. I felt a cold, burning clarity. They had always told me I was nothing without them. They had told me I was a burden. But the numbers on the page told a different story. I wasn't the burden. I was the bank. And the bank was about to foreclose. I walked into my apartment and taped the bank statement to my wall. Right next to the retraction letter from my father. It was a collage of their sins. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Darlene, sent to my new number. I didn't know how she got it. But then I realized she must have looked at the phone bill before I switched carriers. She was resourceful when she wanted to hurt me. Friday is coming. Amber. The text read, Don't test me. I will empty that account and you will get nothing. Be a good daughter and come home. I didn't block the number. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot and sent it to Thorne. Go ahead, Mom, I whispered to the empty room. Make my day. I went to the kitchen and opened a bottle of wine. I poured a glass and toasted the air. To Nana Rose. She had left me a nest egg. Yes, but she had left me something much more valuable than money. She had left me the bait for the trap that would finally end them. I sat by the window and watched the city below. Somewhere out there. Darlene was probably feeling smug. She probably thought she had played her ace. She had no idea that she wasn't holding a winning hand. She was holding a signed confession. And on Friday, I was going to cash it in. Thursday night bled into Friday morning, and the deadline my mother had set hung in the air like smoke. She expected me to crumble. She expected the threat of losing the final $12,000 of my inheritance to send me running back to the guest room, weeping and apologetic. She believed that money was the leash, and she was yanking it as hard as she could. I sat at my kitchen table at 7 a.m, my phone in my hand. My lawyer, Elias Thorne, was on speakerphone. Are you sure you can pull off the performance? He asked. His voice was gravelly with lack of sleep. We had been prepping the documents until midnight. I have spent 33 years pretending to be the daughter they wanted, I said. I can do it for one more hour. Remember, Thorne cautioned, do not interrupt them. Do not correct them. If they lie, let them lie. The stenographer will catch every word. We just need them to sign the affidavit of accounting. Once they sign that, confirming they spent the money on themselves, we have them on grand larceny and fraud. There is no walking back from a notarized confession. I am ready, I said. I hung up and dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring. She had been waiting. Mom? I let my voice crack just enough. I injected a tremor of exhaustion into the syllable. Amber, she said. The triumph in her tone was instantaneous. It was a physical blow. I knew you would call. Did you finally come to your senses? I don't want to fight anymore, I said. I am tired, Mom, and I don't want to lose the money. It is all I have left. I told you, she cooed. her voice shifting from aggressive to patronizingly sweet. "I told you that you need us. The world is too hard for you, honey. We just want to protect you." "I know," I lied. "I want to settle this. I want to come home. But can we do the paperwork first? I want to make sure the trust is handled properly so I can start fresh." "Paperwork?" She sounded suspicious. "I just want to sign the release," I said. "The one that says you managed everything correctly. My lawyer. He says I have to sign it to close the case. Can we meet at the notary office on 3rd Street at 10 o'clock? "The notary?" She paused. I could hear her thinking. To her, a notary meant official business. It meant I was signing away my rights. It meant she won. "Fine, but bring the retraction for the lawsuit too. I want everything signed today." "I will," I promised. I hung up and stared at the wall. My hands were not shaking. My heart was ice cold. I arrived at the notary office at 9:45. It was a sterile building with gray carpets and fluorescent lights that hummed with a low, irritating buzz. Thorne was already there, sitting in the conference room we had rented. Next to him sat a woman with a steno machine, looking invisible in the corner. "They are here," Thorne said, glancing out the window. I watched them park. They took 2 spots. My father drove his massive truck, the one bought with $15,000 of my grandmother's money. My mother stepped out wearing a white coat, looking like a conquering general. Tessa was with them, of course. She wouldn't miss the finale. When they walked into the conference room, the air shifted. They brought a chaotic, sucking energy with them. They looked at me, sitting small in the chair, and then they looked at Thorne. "Who is this?" my father demanded, pointing a thick finger at Elias. "This is Mr. Thorne," I said softly, keeping my eyes on the table. "He drafted the papers. He is just here to witness." "I thought we were done with lawyers," Darlene sniffed. Sitting down opposite me, she placed her designer handbag on the table. "But fine, let's get this over with so we can go get lunch. I am starving." She looked at me with a pitying smile. "You look terrible. Amber, have you been eating? We will get some meat on your bones when you come back to the house." "Let's look at the documents," Thorne said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the table. He had formatted them perfectly. The top page was a waiver of liability. It looked like a surrender. It stated that I, Amber Walsh, accepted the current state of the trust, but attached to it, as Exhibit A, was the itemized list of expenditures: the wedding, the truck, the renovations. "This is the accounting of the trust as it stands today," Thorne explained, his voice smooth and non-threatening. "To close the account and transfer the remaining $12,000 to Amber, or back to the family pool, as you decide, we need the trustee to verify that these past expenses were accurate and approved." Darlene put on her reading glasses. She scanned the list. She didn't flinch at the numbers. She didn't look ashamed that she had spent $130,000 of her mother's legacy on herself. She looked annoyed that she had to read it. Yes, she muttered. "The wedding, the kitchen, the car, it is all there." "And these were necessary expenses?" Thorne asked. "For the beneficiary?" "We are a family," my father interrupted, his voice booming. "What belongs to one belongs to all. Amber lived under our roof. She ate our food. This money was reimbursement for the burden of raising her." "I see," Thorne said. He didn't look at the stenographer, whose fingers were flying across the keys. "So, the $25,000 for Tessa's wedding, that was for Amber's benefit?" Tessa laughed. It was a sharp, cruel sound. "Amber was a bridesmaid. She ate the cake. She drank the champagne. Of course it was for her. She was part of the day. God, why are we nitpicking this? She knows we use the money. She never complained before." "I never complained," I echoed, my voice barely a whisper. "See?" Darlene said, looking at Thorne. She agreed to it. She knew we were managing the funds for the good of the family. Amber is not good with money. If we had given it to her, she would have wasted it. "So you managed it by spending it on assets titled to yourselves?" Thorne asked. "We managed it by investing in the family's stability," my father said, crossing his arms. That truck is used to help her move. That kitchen is where she eats Christmas dinner. It is all the same pot. And the remaining 12,000? Thorne asked. The letter you sent threatened to dissolve it. I was angry, Darlene sighed, waving a hand dismissively. I was trying to snap her out of this episode, but since she is being a good girl now, we will keep it. Maybe we will use it for a family vacation, a cruise, to heal. So you intend to keep control of the remainder? I am the trustee, Darlene said, tapping the table. It is my mother's money. I decide where it goes. And you are willing to sign to that effect? Thorne asked. You are willing to sign this affidavit stating that you authorized all these withdrawals for personal family use and that you maintain control over the balance? Give me the pen, Darlene said. She didn't read the fine print. She didn't read the clause that cited the state statutes regarding fiduciary duty. She didn't read the line where acknowledging the misallocation of funds served as a confession to embezzlement. She just saw a piece of paper that made the problem go away. She signed her name with a flourish, Darlene Walsh. She pushed the paper to my father. Sign it, Roy. Let's go. My father signed. He didn't even look at the numbers. To him, money was power, and he was just signing a receipt for power he had already used. Then, unexpectedly, Tessa reached for the pen. I will witness it, she said smugly. Just so there is no confusion later that Amber was coerced. I want it on record that she sat here and agreed to this. She signed. Thorne took the papers back. He stacked them neatly. He checked the signatures. He looked at the notary, who stamped them with a heavy, final thud. The sound echoed in the room like a gavel. Darlene stood up and smoothed her coat. She beamed at me. It was the smile of a predator who had just swallowed a canary. There, she said. Done. Now, Amber, go get your bags. We will follow you to your apartment and help you pack. We can have you back in your old room by dinner time. I stayed seated. I looked at Thorne. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. I am not going with you, I said. The room went silent. The smile froze on Darlene's face. What? She asked. But you signed. We settled it. You settled it, I said. My voice was no longer weak. I dropped the mask. I sat up straight, squaring my shoulders. You just signed a sworn affidavit admitting to spending $138,000 of a trust fund on non-beneficiary expenses. You admitted, on the record, that you used my money for your truck, your kitchen, and Tessa's wedding. So what? Tessa scoffed. It is family money. It is a trust fund, Thorne interjected. His voice was no longer smooth. It was sharp and dangerous. Regulated by state law, and under the law, a trustee cannot derive personal benefit from the trust assets. It is called embezzlement. It is a felony, and since the amount exceeds $100,000, it is a Class B felony. What are you talking about? My father growled. We are her parents. You are fiduciaries, Thorne said, and you just confessed to grand larceny. Amber, Darlene hissed, her face turning red. Stop this nonsense. Get in the car. No, I said. I am not getting in the car, and neither are you. I picked up the folder Thorne had prepared. This affidavit is going to the district attorney's office this afternoon, I said, along with the bank records I pulled on Monday, along with the letter you sent threatening to steal the rest. You didn't just break a rule. Mom, you broke the law. You wouldn't, Darlene whispered. You wouldn't send your mother to jail. You tried to ruin my career, I said. You tried to have me committed. You stole my future to buy a truck. You broke the contract of being a mother a long time ago. Now, I am just enforcing the contract you signed. We will sue you, Tessa screamed. We will bury you. With what money? I asked calmly. The trust is frozen. I filed the motion this morning before you arrived, and once the DA sees this, your personal assets will be frozen pending restitution. You don't have a war chest anymore. Dad, you have a crime scene. My father looked at the papers, then at me. For the first time, he saw the trap. He realized that the daughter he thought was weak had just outmaneuvered him in the one arena he thought he owned: money. "Let's go," he said to Darlene, grabbing her arm. His face was gray. "Don't say another word." "But," Darlene started. "Shut up," he roared at her. They scrambled for the door. They looked small. They looked terrified. They looked like people running from a burning building, not realizing the fire was already in their pockets. I watched them go. "Did we get it?" I asked the stenographer. She looked up, her eyes wide. "I got every word." "Good," I said. I turned to Thorne. "Send it." "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once I send this to the prosecutor, there is no stopping it. It is out of your hands." "They stole 10 years of my life," I said. "I am just taking them back." I stood up and walked to the window. I watched my parents' car peel out of the parking lot. They were driving fast, reckless. They were running. But they couldn't run from a signature. The trap had snapped shut. The cage they had built for me was now the cage they were standing in, and for the first time in 33 years, I was holding the key. The weeks that followed the signing at the notary office were defined not by noise, but by the terrifying, grinding sound of bureaucratic machinery. When you drop a stone into a deep well, there is a long silence before the splash. My family had dropped the stone when they signed that affidavit. Now, the water was rising to drown them. The district attorney did not view the case as a family misunderstanding. He viewed it as a textbook case of elder financial abuse and fiduciary fraud, because the victim, my grandmother, was deceased, and the beneficiary, me, was vulnerable at the time of the theft. The state took a particular, aggressive interest in the matter. The first domino to fall was the assets. 3 days after the meeting, the court issued a temporary freezing order on my parents' personal bank accounts to ensure restitution could be made. I heard about it from Elias Thorne. He told me that my father had tried to use his debit card at a gas station and it had been declined. I imagined Roy Walsh, a man who defined his worth by his credit limit, standing at a pump, humiliated in front of strangers. It was a small justice, but it tasted sweet. The forensic accounting process was invasive and thorough. Auditors combed through 10 years of financial history. They found more than just the wedding and the truck. They found vacations disguised as business trips. They found jewelry purchases listed as home maintenance. They peeled back the veneer of my parents' upper-middle-class respectability and revealed the rot beneath. They were not wealthy. They were thieves living on borrowed time and stolen money. My mother tried to reach me. Of course, she used a neighbor's phone. She used a payphone. She even tried to mail a handwritten letter to my office, marked personal and confidential. It never reached my desk. The security protocols at North Vantage Systems worked exactly as designed. The letter was intercepted, scanned, flagged as a violation of the cease and desist order, and forwarded directly to my lawyer. Thorne added it to the pile of evidence for the harassment suit. Every time they tried to touch me, they only added another brick to the wall separating us. I did not have to block them anymore because the law was doing it for me. A judge granted a temporary restraining order based on the threats in my mother's previous letters and the erratic behavior displayed at the notary. They were legally barred from coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. But the true death blow to their control was not legal, it was social. For my entire life, Darlene had controlled the narrative. She was the gatekeeper of the family reputation, the one who told the aunts and cousins that Amber was struggling or confused. She relied on my silence to maintain her sainthood. I decided to break the silence one last time. I composed a single email. In the recipient field, I added every aunt, uncle, and cousin in the Walsh and Miller families. I added the neighbors I had grown up with. I added the pastor of their church. Subject: the truth about the Rose Miller Trust. Dear family and friends, for years, you have been told that I am unstable, ungrateful, and dependent on my parents. I am writing this to correct the record with facts, not opinions. Attached is the sworn affidavit signed by Roy and Darlene Walsh, admitting to the embezzlement of $138,000 from the trust fund left to me by my grandmother. Rose, they used this money to fund their lifestyle. including the purchase of the truck Roy drives and the wedding of my sister, Tessa. I have taken legal action to recover what was stolen. I am not asking for your pity, and I am not asking for you to choose sides. I am simply letting you know that I am safe, I am successful, and I am no longer part of this dynamic. Please respect my privacy as I move forward. I hit send. The explosion was silent, but the shockwave was absolute. Within 2 hours, my cousin Sarah texted me, "Holy shit! Aunt Linda just drove to your mom's house and is screaming at her in the driveway. The whole neighborhood can hear it." I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just felt a heavy weight lift off my chest, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying since I was a child. The shame wasn't mine anymore. I had returned it to its rightful owners. The fallout for Tessa was particularly satisfying. The revelation that her perfect wedding was funded by stolen money, money stolen from her own sister, shattered her golden child image, her husband, a man who prided himself on his own financial independence, was reportedly horrified. Sarah told me he had moved into a hotel for a few days to think. Tessa wasn't the victim. She was an accomplice. She had signed the affidavit. She had laughed about eating the cake. Now, she was choking on it. My parents faced a grimmer reality. To avoid jail time, their lawyer advised them to make full restitution immediately. They had to liquidate. The truck was sold. The boat my father kept at the lake was sold. I heard rumors that they were taking out a second mortgage on the house Darlene loved more than she loved her children, to pay me back the $138,000 plus legal fees. They were losing the very symbols of status they had sacrificed their morality to acquire. 6 weeks after the holiday lunch where my mother told me to leave, a check arrived at Elias Thorne's office. It was a cashier's check for the full amount, including the remaining $12,000 from the account. I went to his office to pick it up. "It is over," Thorne said, handing me the envelope. "The criminal charges are being suspended pending a probationary period, since they paid restitution. But if they contact you, if they violate the order, the deal is off and they go to trial." "They won't contact me," I said. "They can't afford to." I took the check. It was a piece of paper, but it represented 10 years of gaslighting, 10 years of manipulation, 10 years of being told I wasn't enough. I deposited the money into a new investment account that afternoon. I didn't buy a car. I didn't buy clothes. I put it away for a down payment on a house that no one would ever have a key to but me. That evening, I stood in my apartment at the Sovereign. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of violet and gold. My phone was quiet. My email was empty of threats. I had one last thing to do. I opened my text messages. I unblocked my mother's number for exactly 1 minute. I typed a message. I didn't want to be cruel. I didn't want to curse at her. I just wanted to close the loop. "You told me to stop relying on the family. I want you to know that I listened. I have recovered what was mine, and I have removed what was yours. I am debt-free, guilt-free, and family-free. Do not reply to this. Do not look for me. Enjoy the silence you created." I hit send. Then I blocked the number again, permanently. I walked to my front door. It was a heavy solid door with a deadbolt that slid into place with a reassuring thunk. I turned the lock. For the first time in my life, I wasn't locking myself in to hide. I was locking the world out. I looked around my apartment. The furniture was mine. The books were mine. The quiet was mine. There was no ghost of sage in the air. There was no judgment in the corners. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, conditioned air of freedom. My mother was right about one thing. She said I wouldn't survive without them. She was wrong. I hadn't just survived. I had ascended. I walked to the window, looked out at the lights of the city one last time, and turned off the lamp. The darkness was not scary. It was peaceful. And it was finally, completely mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story and walking this path to freedom with me. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Please comment down below with your city or country so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, Please make sure to subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help more people hear this story.